Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's 6 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening. We'd like to now call our regular council meeting of Monday, February the 9th to order, please. I don't actually need a mover, but thank you. We're just getting there to it. Thank you. I do wish to begin by acknowledging that the district of Sooke is located on the traditional territories of both the Sooke and Sianu nations. So council, I'll turn your attention to agenda item number 3, which is the agenda for February 9th regular meeting be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Beddoes. Welcome back. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. I have meeting minutes here for adoption so that the following council meeting minutes be adopted. That would be January 26th regular and February 5th special. Adopted by or moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Any questions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 5 is the report of the Chief Administrative Officer. The written report is on the consent agenda, but I'll ask our CAO if there's anything else to report out in this section.
Nothing further at this time.
The report on the consent is fine. So that'll move us right into delegations, please. 6.1, which is a resolution to UBCM protecting homeowner assets when facing redevelopment. And we have our presenter tonight, Miss Susan Belford. And we have 5 minutes set aside for you today. Thank you very much for joining us. When you start speaking, we will start the clock. Oh, please turn on the microphone too.
Thank you, Mayor Tate. Councillors, I'm Susan Belford from Sooke, Lannon Creek, actually. I'm speaking for a provincial organization, the Active Manufactured Homeowners Society, also known as bcmho.ca. There are 900 communities of manufactured homes on leased land called parks in BC. These communities host 37,500 homes, housing 65,000 people. The district of Sooke is home to 12 manufactured home communities with 451 homes. The total assessed value of these Sooke homes is $95 million. The assessed land value of these communities is much less, about $38 million. Manufactured homes on leased land offer young families an entry to the real estate market and a downsizing option within the market for seniors. Manufactured home communities are neighborhoods like any other. The homes are not trailers or RVs. They're attached to the land and are assessed as real property for which property tax is collected. The Housing Ministry gives lip service to the important role these homes play in housing affordability, but legislation still does not protect the property rights of these homeowners. This has been true for decades and was raised at UBCM in both 2006 and 2008. And actually, in 2008, Sooke created its own manufactured home redevelopment policy, which mandated the payment of assessed value for each home on the property, although payment was delayed until the end of the tenancy, making timely home replacement a little challenging. Just imagine you have a home that you've loved and cared for over the years, and now you need to sell. And you're about to put it on the market when you learn that the owner of the land underneath your home is planning to sell for redevelopment. Your plans are immediately toast. They're upended, and depending on where you are in the province, you could be in for several years of uncertainty and in danger of not being paid what your home is worth at all. Although some manufactured homes in Sooke are selling for $400,000 and up, the average assessed and market values across BC is around $350,000 for a 1,200 square foot home. That's a substantial financial asset, unrecognized in current legislation. Although the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act states that homeowners should be paid the assessed value of their home in compensation for sale and redevelopment of the community, it provides no guidance on how this is to happen. mandating a mere $20,000 to $65,000 payment until homeowners sue for the full value at BC Supreme Court. What other homeowner is required to jump through those kind of hoops? Current provincial housing policies are increasing development pressures, and manufactured home communities are prime targets. Currently, no communities are facing redevelopment in the Sooke area, but park closures are common in the Lower Mainland and the interior. When a municipality expropriates neighborhood land for development, the BC Expropriation Act comes into play, and the market value of the property as of the day before the notice of expropriation, as well as costs related to the disturbance of expropriation, are calculated and paid to the homeowner. The same logic should apply when the neighborhood in question is a manufactured home community. Municipal rezoning and permitting for redevelopment affects an expropriation of the homes in the neighborhood. Therefore, homeowners should receive fair compensation in the form of the assessed or market value of the property and financial coverage of their moving and additional costs. In the fall of 2025, the City of Nanaimo saw the wisdom of this and adopted a policy mandating payment of full market or assessed value, whichever is higher, and a payment schedule to facilitate the homeowner's purchase or rental of a new home. The province has mandated that municipalities may set policy on this issue, which is great, but it results in varied approaches from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Nanaimo homeowners are well protected. Sooke homeowners are slightly less well protected, while many across the province have no protection. Such inconsistency undermines fairness and stability. The creation of new legislation that adequately protects the property rights of homeowners and landowners alike is urgently needed, and that's why I'm asking you to support the sending of this resolution to the UBCM meetings next fall. And I have kind of spoken the essence of the whereases. And so therefore be it resolved that the provincial government be requested to replace the Manufactured Home Park Tenancy Act with a new act which protects the property rights and financial equity of homeowners as well as landowners. And be it further resolved that this act contains provisions similar to those outlined in the City of Nanaimo's Manufactured Home Community Relocation Assistance Policy to ensure that homeowners being displaced due to redevelopment are assisted in the relocation process and fairly compensated for their displacement by the developer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Belford. Council will consider that, and we can look for a motion arising under new business later on in tonight's meeting. Okay. Okay, so next up is item 7, which is our public question and comment period. And I understand before we go into that Councillor McMath has joined the meeting virtually. So why don't we just see that Councillor McMath can hear us and we can.
I can.
You can hear us, okay? And I heard you, so I think we're good. We're just short a clerk today, so we're good. Okay, thank you. Okay, welcome, Councillor McMath. Okay, so I'll move into public question and comment period, please, for any members of the public here tonight that would like to speak on items on tonight's agenda.
Ellen Lords. I just wanted to also comment with affordable housing as in modular homes. It was another item that we did not discuss during the OCP. We had no opportunity to discuss that to put different places, recognize places for modular homes as we did in 2010. And I think that's really important because it's affordable living. So that's just something that you should be looking at. The other question I had was in regard to Mr. Saunders' letter. In the report, where is it? Lost it. in the CEO's report that that information is there, that something has been decided already with something that's quite controversial and not settled with the public in what's in the OCP. And I wondered if that was decided by council and then advised to the CEO that a website should explain how and when or clarify situations. I'm just trying to find out what page is that on. Hold on. Okay, 15, 17. Okay, there we go. Under the communications, planning department information bulletins. That's on page 15. A new webpage has been created to provide clear, accessible guidance on common planning and development topics. Sounds good. And represents phase or broader phase approach to improving how planning and development information is communicated and accessed. But I think what has to happen is there needs to be communication between the people and council before like the communication hasn't happened. It hasn't happened in a way that there's been a talk with the situation that's going on between about the tree bylaw and things like that. There hasn't been really good communication. And I think we have to have an open conversation about that to dispel any worries or concerns and make things clear. Just putting it on the website doesn't make it clear, is what I'm saying.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you. It's something that perhaps the land use committee could discuss. That's probably a good place for it. I'm not aware that we adopted a tree bylaw, so that could be an interesting.
I'm not sure if that's on there.
Okay.
I haven't looked at it. I just saw.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe we should.
you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lewis. Other speakers tonight?
My name is Helen Ritz. I live in Sooke, and I know you can't answer me, but I have some questions on the new community grant policy. It's page 60 to 63 of the agenda, and I'm just going to maybe just list my questions, and then when it comes time for council to discuss, maybe some of these will be in your ear. I was just curious. It says applicant must be a community-based nonprofit organization or volunteer group with a fiscal sponsor. And I just kind of was hoping to get some definition on what a fiscal sponsor is. I can imagine it, but I'm not sure what it is. Then the other thing that concerns me, it says projects must be new initiatives in one or more of the following areas. And I would say, looking back on who was awarded in 2025, there were really very few new initiatives. They're kind of established, if you call established, but at least by a couple of years. So it feels a little bit like perhaps some of the groups are being dropped off by this must be new initiative. So I'd have some questions about what that means. What else? I did like the wording, projects should demonstrate a clear community benefit and alignment with district strategic policies. So I thought maybe that is more of a criteria than a new initiative and/or a new initiative that also aligns. And then I flip over. It says total funds available will be determined annually through the district's budget process. And I was hoping, historically, there's been about $65,000, and I don't know if that's something you guys just decided to do, set a number and then continue every year so there isn't great discussion. I'm running out of time, I realize. If I could have another minute or two. And I saw that there were some examples given where, example, Ladysmith gives like 0.5% of their budget or something. So it would be kind of nice to know rather than have to discuss it every year what the community grant is. or the pool of money is. What else, what is going to say? Oh, and then changing the submission deadline. For 2027, there's a thought of changing it. It says submission deadline is September 1st. I think that's quite cruel. Most organizations kind of step down for the summer. And it's actually quite nice to have to do your grant in the spring, and then you usually find out by June, and then you come back in September and you have some idea. So it says that the new submission will be September 1st. So I just keep in mind that that's making people work over the holidays. And then it said that they'll be notified by October 30th. That's 2 months. That's pretty long. If you're trying to plan, like I'm also wondering, it doesn't really say if you find out in October 30th that you're successful and you're given a little pool of money, is that money for the 2028, like January to December? It would be good to understand that, because you just can't get something and then have to plan something in weeks. And what was I going to say? Oh, the evaluation criteria. I quite like that. And there is actually 15% is given for innovation and creativity. The project introduces new ideas, partnerships, or introduction and approaches that contribute to local vitality and resilience. And I thought maybe this is where the new projects could get extra points. You wouldn't actually have to say that the grants are only for new projects, but if it is a new project, it would have a bit of a benefit in the scoring. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Ritz. Do I have other speakers tonight? Or first or second time? Welcome back, Ms. Lurs.
Sorry, I was a little confused when I was talking. I was in a rush to get here for 6 o'clock, trying to lock up my animals before allegedly there's a wolf in the area. Anyway, it was a DP areas that I was concerned about. And I think that that discussion has to happen for clarification, and it can't be clarified just by putting on a website. I think we have to talk about it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you back for the clarity. Was there anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to speak.
Please introduce
Oh,
yourself.
sorry, yes. Malcolm McNaughton,
Okay.
and I work with Key Corp. We're a developer here in Sooke. I personally have been involved in over 500 units being developed in Sooke, so I'm pretty familiar with developing in Sooke. And I'm here today to speak about the DP guidelines that are currently in place as of the December 8th OCP adoption. And one of the things that had been asked for, I sat here prior to that at the public hearing asking to have these beta tested and to have some discussion about how these are actually going to apply. And we've now been 2 months since that adoption, and there's been a lot of back and forth in the community and elsewhere that I don't think has been particularly helpful. It has certainly started a conversation, but I don't think it's ended a lot of conversations. And so I think that it would be very helpful to have staff sit down with the SBA, with the community, and to actually understand what is being required and how it is going to be applied. And I just, you know, the guidelines that are on the website, they're a start. There's some good things about them. There's some other things that maybe could be improved upon. I'm not going to go into all of those details here. But I just would like to say that I think it would be very beneficial for the community if we actually got down face to face, brass tacks. I've asked for this when there was a industry association was invited to a September meeting to go before the OCP was even adopted. I asked for this at that time. It still hasn't happened. I think based on the conversation that we're having in the community, I think it really needs to happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, so we'll move on then into our consent agenda. So that is that the following items on the consent agenda be adopted by consent. We have 8.2 correspondence, 8.3 report of our chief administrative officer, 8.4 community economic development, 8.5. Well, you can read them here all the way to 8.9. I'll ask members of council if there's anything that you wish to extract. I would like to pull one item under the correspondence. It is 21M. And it's the Local Government Leadership Academy newsletter. Anything from anyone else? So I'll look for a mover, please, that the following items be adopted by consent. That's moved by Councillor Haldane, seconded by Beddoes. Any comments? All those in favor then? And that's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move into section 9.1. Okay, so that takes us right to the community grant policy. So I will turn this over to staff to take us through their report.
Great, thank you. So this report brings forward a revised community grant policy. I'll highlight two primary changes and then also hopefully address the questions from a member of the public. So first, staff recommend continuing with a spring intake for 2026 and then transitioning to a fall intake going forward. And just to clarify, that fall intake would then be providing funding for the 2027 year. So the reason why staff are recommending this change is to align the program with budget deliberations. So the program has been oversubscribed year after year, where we've been seeking alternative funding sources beyond the 65,000. And this would just allow for appropriate planning alongside budget. That's the intent, but certainly staff will take direction from council should that timing not make sense. But that was the reason why staff were bringing that forward. Second, the draft policy sets a maximum grant amount at $5,000 per organization. And this is to better reflect the recent allocations in the past few years and help manage expectations in, again, an oversubscribed program. Specific to the question from the public around a fiscal sponsor, so that there is a definition in the draft policy, and that is to provide alignment. So if there's maybe, to offer an example, a neighborhood emergency preparedness program, they want to, they have an idea for an initiative. Rather than, if they're not a registered not-for-profit themselves, they would look to partner with a local not-for-profit that would be the fiscal sponsor around the budget and accountability for that initiative to proceed forward. So it's a way of facilitating collaboration and innovation within the community at a grassroots level. Specific to new initiatives, I believe when we previously discussed this with council, the idea was that this would be seed funding and looking to evolve the programs rather than rinse and repeat as far as a sustainable in perpetuity funding source. So looking to evolve events and activities instead of keeping the same model year after year. So in that case, hopefully we're aiding agencies in building capacity so that they wouldn't be reliant on the district as a funding source, if that makes sense. And then the last, I already spoke to the submission deadlines, specific to budget process and funding samples. Staff will bring forward with, through our Director of Finance, with budget, a sort of status quo recommendation unless we receive other direction from council at that 65,000. But we have included some other models in the report that might be an opportunity for council to look at other ways of allocating budget to the community program going forward. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions and provide further clarification.
Okay, so we are sitting as council. So the first part of this then is that council endorse the community grant policy CO-032 2026 as presented, and that for the 2026 intake year, the intake period be varied to March 1st to April 8th. So we'll start with that motion. That's moved by Councillor Haldane and seconded by Pearson. So now on the motion, and this motion can obviously be amended accordingly, but go ahead, Councillor Haldane.
Yeah, so to go back to a couple of things brought up in the public, the community grant, what is a fiscal sponsor and what are the new initiatives? Is it possible to go through you and have at least some clarification on that?
Yep, so Ms. Moog spoke to the fiscal host part, but I think maybe a bit more clarity around new initiatives.
Certainly. So that would be the innovation and creativity that was spoken to in the eligibility criteria. So that evolution. So rather than an event being maybe not new isn't the appropriate choice of words. So I certainly take that feedback as well taken. So an evolution of the event. So maybe, for example, it is doing an event, but they want to try it in a new location, for example. So changing that environment and context to maybe expand reach and impact of the event. So an evolution. So the criteria, as the member of the public noted, might be better capture the intent as opposed to strictly new verbatim. Is that clarifying?
So who would decide if it's a new initiative or an old one? Would that be just up to interpretation?
It would be council.
Okay,
So typically what happens is that certainly but I think part of that is the case where we receive all the applications that come through, and then we then have to deliberate if we'll accept anything that arrived after the deadline. And then we kind of go through them, and staff will sometimes flag notes or provide some background if it's a repeat application or what they may have already, because sometimes we also ask what other funds from the district they've received. But then really it's council that has to make this determination,
right.
or could then form a committee or something else like that.
So this doesn't leave groups like the food bank out in the cold because they're not a new issue. Okay, fair enough.
No, and then we also have in that regard, some are they have service agreements. So
Yeah.
the intent is that if you have a service agreement, you wouldn't apply to this stream because you already have your annual funding every year after year after year. So this is meant to be those ones that aren't in service agreement.
Okay, I have one more thing in it. Maybe completely out of.
You just turned off your microphone.
For the consent agenda, is it possible to pull Bill 25 and have that forward? I missed it. I was nodding off. I don't even know why. I just have a couple of questions about it. Is it possible to put that on the? If not, it's all good. I can ask those at a later time or something.
Probably not, because we've already voted on it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
But you can always do a motion arising later in the meeting
Okay, you bet.
and do that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
all
you.
right. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, and to the chair, no absolute criticism of the program, because I really like what staff has done there, Ms. Moog has done. It's getting clearer and clearer. I do have a couple of questions to the chair. Could you explain the $5,000? Is that the maximum that anyone's allowed to have?
Yeah, we have always had it at
Seven.
7, and then in years, because the program is like triple what we have in the budget, we've had to make some decisions of drawing some down so that every applicant.
Mhm.
So I think staff have gone by what council has done and then created a new maximum.
Right. Okay, and I just have a comment on that, is that I felt that's a great addition. But I felt in the past that people across the globe, and I will say that tongue in cheek, apply at the maximum. 7,000, 7,000, 7,000, like, and we've made comments that, a lot of applicants have $7,000 itis. And then the next applicant comes in, looking for $612.92. And I appreciate that. And the last question to you is, are we clearly defining the benefit to Sooke? Because, we get those applications that come from really well-meaning organizations. I'm not judging them, but they have grant writers. And then we debate on that. I'm hoping that somewhere there could be an automatic, you have to demonstrate that linkage to Sooke, as opposed to, I've heard some good arguments from people say, well, you can drive into a toothpick building contest at Saanich or something. I'm trying to be generic. I don't want people to be discouraged, but I also think it's important that the people of Sooke are expecting us to be returning that money back into our community. It's tax dollars.
It is. So part of that, I'll just answer that and then I'll go to Councillor Beddoes, is that's why the in-council presentation is important. So arguably some show up on paper, perhaps scoring higher than others. But then that's where we can ask those questions and we get the in-council presentation, which would still remain. And then then a lot of times it's in that And that forms part of the decision there is also receiving that information and that, or we can even ask, like, I don't see the connection to Sooke at all. And they'll either answer that or they won't, right?
And my point, thank you, Chair, is that in the application process, are we asking that very specific pointed question?
I'll ask staff that.
Thank you. So through the chair, so based on council's previous feedback, exactly that. So as the member of the public also spoke to, where we've added an additional evaluation criteria matrix, and the first item on that list, for example, is the extent to which the project supports the district's strategic plan. So that direction with council and reflecting where Sooke is at that particular moment in time to better capture based on council's previous feedback. So hopefully that does capture it appropriately, and also looks to bring this form onto an online form as opposed to paper, where we can have required fields, including location of impact of resources that would also respond to Councillor Pearson's question there.
Good answer. Thank you.
I have a question just on the dates. So I understand in our motion today, which is on the floor, that it would be the intake is going to open relatively soon for 2026. I'm not quite understanding how it's going to work does that mean that later this year, the submission will open again? So then my challenge there is the timing, because it is an election time. Some of the events that we fund in March, like let's say, might not happen till November. So would the organizers be able to deem it a success? They don't know yet because we haven't received the report because of the timing. And then suppose this council says, okay, we're going to then determine that the budget is at 75,000, or 65,000. The next council might axe the program. And now the groups don't have anything to go forward with in the new year. So to me, I would suggest that this intake remain in place for both 2026 and 2027, so that we're not binding the next council on a fiscal decision that they may or may not support, and putting the groups, so we don't do an intake this fall. Rather, it would be starting in 2027, the intake of the March remains, and then that council can decide what to do with the policy and what the budget deliberation is. Because it's one thing, it's the same people, but a next council might say, you know what, and to the member of the public that asked, this was at $75,000. It's been scaled back to 65,000. We have over the years sometimes used council contingency or sponsorship to drop the programs into other funding buckets, or put a service agreement forward. But another council might say, you know what, this is important to our community. We're going to double it. And now you have, I don't know. I don't know what that discussion is going to be like, but I think it might be helpful for the next councillor. There will be new people, at least understand what the process is, that you need to make these deliberations in public, that the program exists, and here's all these great things that happen within the community. Like, they would otherwise miss out on that entirely. And then it's like, okay, now we are funding something, but I have no idea what this is. So it would be a good way. And then next year in 2027 does the second intake, and then it resets or something. So that is just what I would recommend. I'm fine for 2026, but I do think that we shouldn't do an intake in September, and it should wait and be 2 years in a row. That's my thought on that. Others? What other people think about that? Councillor Beddoes. Sorry, Beddoes and Bateman. Go ahead, Beddoes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
In the microphone.
Yeah, thank you very much. I enjoyed that little discussion on everybody so far. This has been such a bugaboo for me over the last 8 years. We've had a policy in place, which we've thrown out the window about 3 or 4 times, and did just whatever we did willy-nilly. We used COVID money, we used this money, we used that money. my understanding, and I welcome this, is that we originally said that it was basically seed money, that it wasn't used for ongoing funding. And unfortunately, we have done that. We've allowed it to go. People have to drop off a year, survive for 1 year, then come back for another 3. And I was never happy with that. So I'm glad to see a more rigid policy with some more guidelines in. Again, it's always up to council. Council can override any of this policy and vote for anything anyways. So I'm fairly happy with it. I like the idea of seed funding. I like the idea of $5,000. And I really like the idea that it benefits Sooke, because there's been some proposals put before us at this council that has very little to do with Sooke, unless you look at it a very broad brush. So I would like to look at a little harder eye in the future, whether I'm here or whatever council's here, and really define. And I think staff has taken that advice from us, and especially from me, who's complained about it for years, and better clarify exactly what the benefit is to Sooke, because we've done some things that were outside in the Wandafuka area, which I was not in favor of. And people made some good arguments and good programs, but it has to clearly benefit Sooke. So all in all, I'm fairly happy with this. I do agree the dates can change a little bit. And the other things, if it doesn't work, then council has the ability to change it on the fly. So I just wanted to thank staff for bringing it forward. I think it's a good addition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I agree with all that's been said to date. It's a great new policy. The purpose and policy statements are clean and clear. Back to what you were saying, I got a bit confused there around a second intake. I think there's only the one intake recommended here.
No.
And
So the motion that I read out that was seconded was what was in the report, and that for 2026, the intake period be varied from March 1st to April 8th. But then that's where the policy that is drafted has a September 1st intake to October. So that's where if this policy stands, we would do an intake for the 2026 year, then we do another one in September.
got it. Okay.
And then that budget isn't
Yeah.
ours.
Yeah.
So that's my confusion is that, and I'll put an amendment forward in a bit, but that's the clarity there.
So you could also just amend the policy to state the submission deadline is September 1st, 2027. Annually beginning, yeah. So you need the 2027 in there
But that's where I think it'll be a different council that may,
for them to make that.
they would need to then get briefed on what the policy is, and then it'll be theirs. Because there were times where we took the money and split it. So we did one intake in part of the year, one intake the other part of the year, and then it just got confusing on how it all worked.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of positivity here. Back to Ms. Ritz's questions, that September 1st deadline, whether the next council does indeed adopt that. Is that just some comments on that consideration about the pressures it puts on nonprofit groups for activity in the summer? Through you to staff.
Thank you for the question. This was with finance. We were discussing this trade-off as well, and the feedback is well taken. So we'll certainly defer to the direction of council. I think that perhaps what I'm hearing is we retain the spring intake for this year and next year, but have a conversation with community groups to see if there is an opportunity for the kind of Q4, the last quarter of the year, long budget, if that's worthwhile, or if it's a moot point. And again, we just defer to council's directions, but we're certainly happy to keep the spring intake for this year and next.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put okay, are you?
Well,
good?
I just wanted to just make the clear point here. This Appendix A will give clear direction to applicants, and I guess we'll see them break down their application through these criteria. So that will certainly improve the process. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to put forward an amendment, and it would be in the second line where it says, and that for the 2026, I'm going to add and 2027. And 2027 is the amendment. So that's seconded by Counselor Bateman. So then in this case, with that amendment, there will not be a September intake this year. It'll just be for 2026 and 2027. The same dates of March the 1st will apply. It will give the new council the opportunity to go through the process and the budget, and then they can then award for the 2027 year and then decide if that then starts the process of the September intake for 2028, because they'll be briefed on the whole budgeting process. So that's my amendment. Thank you. Anything on the amendment? Counselor Pearson?
Yeah, and I follow your logic. I'm following the bouncing ball. Is there a required communication for somebody who would be expecting in that window, in that fall intake?
Sorry, can you clarify that? Like,
So if we're like, okay, we're not going to have the September or the fall intake of
Yeah.
applications, right? We're gonna
just what?
just one application. So is there anybody that has cycled through that could potentially get caught in there that we'd have to notify? That was my question.
Through the chair. So this would be a new consideration for this year. So there is nobody that would be impacted.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm just thinking about and my question is about people who have applied historically and in that time window. So, okay, thank you. No question.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's applied before is probably more familiar with the spring intake. A switch to the fall would be a big change because most people are looking for a spring intake, historically speaking. Okay, anything on the amendment? Nope. Okay, so I'll call the question on the amendment. All those in favor, please. That's unanimous. Thank you. And then on the main amended motion, is there anything further? Okay, so this will be effective this year. Counselor Haldane?
I just want to, for clarity, I mean, because people in the audience don't always understand how everything's done, but councils can't tie the hands of a future council and so on. So I think it's important for them to understand that anything we do in here today with only less than a year going and stuff, a future council can say, no, we don't agree with what you're saying. We don't agree with the contract you may or may not have signed. So I think it's important even for our own, so that we don't wear this in some way, shape or form, that what we're trying to do is for what we think is the best for the community. But at the same time, a future council may say, no, we don't agree with what they've said, even sign contracts, things like that. There's legislative supremacy and contractual override. You can terminate a contract or suspend at any time you want as a future council from what a previous council or governors have done. And that includes provincial, federal, and local. So it's just so that people understand that we're going to try and do our best that we can under the circumstances, but it may not fall into the hands of the new council and be the same way. And so
I think it just depends on the wording in the contract.
yeah,
Because if you were to tear up all the contracts, you may find yourself in paying out a lot of
yeah,
legal
it gives
fees
a bunch
for.
of verbiage to it, but in general, yeah,
These grants are meant to be, they're relatively small.
Yeah.
Are meant to be used this year, so this council would be responsible for those decisions and those outcomes once we make them. And the intention would be that they're expended this year, and if they're not, then they have to be returned. And then the next council can be familiar with it and then launch the program.
fair enough. Yeah, I appreciate
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Yes, Counselor Bateman.
My final comment here is, yes, this is great work. I was part of this community grant committee back in 2012. You were chairing it, I think, at the time. And the key point is that this district has been supporting community groups loyally and long-term. So whatever the next council does is up to them, but it's wonderful to see this program continuing to evolve, and particularly under the aegis of the community investment program. Thank you.
It's interesting you say that because my first foray into local government in Sooke was on the Community Grants Committee with now Counselor Haldane. That's where I met him back. That would have been in 2005, 6 or 7, something like that. So yeah, it's gone through many reiterations. So, okay, I'll call a question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much for your work on this new policy. We look forward to seeing what comes of it. Okay, that takes us to 9.2, minor amendment, letters of support policy. Over to staff.
Thank you. So as a part of implementing the Community Investment Program, Council directed staff to review the letter of support policy alongside a suite of related policy considerations, such as the community grant policy that we just spoke about. This report recommends a minor amendment related to signing authority. The change is practical in nature and intended to provide flexibility when turnaround times are very tight, in some cases with only a few business hours notice from local organizations. So what this change essentially says, as it is on the screen, would give delegated authority in addition to right now it's identified for the CAO and the mayor. But sometimes if we've community organization has a very short, like I said, sometimes end of one day, the deadline's noon the next morning. Getting that signature on the document really, really quickly can be challenging. So that's the problem we're looking to solve here. And I will just add as well that any letters that are provided out to organizations would then flow through the correspondence package going forward for transparency and record keeping. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this would be that council directs staff to amend the letters of support policy CO-017-2017 to authorize additional designated staff positions, including the manager of communications and community relations, to issue letters of support on behalf of the district of Sooke where appropriate to support third-party grant applications and similar requests. Moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Bateman. Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, and when we had this discussion in the past, I think it came forward. This was a concern because it does happen from time to time, and then there's a lot of special meetings that get called, and it could just, and then we have to get quorum. So no, I'm in support of it. The only question I have is, and I'm not going to propose amendment, is designated staff positions, right, including. So that's plural there. So I'd like.
So should it just be position?
It says including the manager of communications, and I anticipate that's in case she was away. So I'm through the chair to you. That's a question I'm asking. Is that just in the event that manager of communications was away?
I'm seeing a nod there.
Okay, perfect. So
Thank you
I'm
for
good with it.
catch.
Thank you.
Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so I think that would be at the discretion of the CAO to direct to your senior staff. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I've got no questions. This is great. I think the key points there are these letters need to support third-party grant applications, do not involve financial commitments or policy implications, and are consistent with council-endorsed strategies, plans, or programs. So, and as Councillor Pearson says, yeah, that's a time saver and efficiencies. Yes.
Well, sometimes it's just logistics. So I'll use a day. I just remember the odd phone call where a staff member is having to read the letter to me while I'm driving, and I'm like, sounds good. Attach an e-signature. I hope you have one, and send it out. And it is an initiative that is locally supported, maybe even funded by council. And it was just the last minute thing that emerged. And then timing wise, I've had the odd staff member when I'm sick come to my house so I could sign something. There's just those but they're not often. And just so that we're aware of what they are, they would go through the portal. We'll still see them. So there is that transparency around what we've seen. And it's just to deal with the infrequency, or sometimes I admit I sometimes get locked out of devices. So I'm like, I can't even look at it. So until I re-authenticate and all that, like it's a thing. So anyone here would understand. Just so that helps. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. 9.3 is license of occupation policy. Over to staff, please.
Yes, and so council is being asked to consider an amendment to the license of occupation policy. The proposed change removes two blanket restrictions in the current policy. First, it removes the prohibition on applications for or from private or residential property owners. Second, it removes the fixed maximum license term of 3 years plus 1 3-year extension. So these changes do not approve any licenses of occupation, nor do they commit council to approving further or future applications. The amendment simply allows applications to be submitted so that council may consider them individually on their merits. Council would, of course, continue to retain full discretion over whether an application is approved, the length of the license, and the terms and conditions imposed. Public lands would continue to be held in trust. Licenses remain non-exclusive and non-permitted, and all applications would still be assessed for land use impacts, neighborhood effects, and public interest. So staff are recommending the policy amendment to provide procedural clarity and greater flexibility while maintaining council authority over public land use.
Okay, so the recommended action is that council adopt the license of occupation policy CO-029 as amended. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Bateman. Thank you. Councillor Beddoes, any comment?
No, that's fairly straightforward. I think it cleans up things, doesn't change a whole lot.
Okay,
Good.
Councillor Bateman, anything?
I had a question, and that relates to clause 4.10, and this is the term of license of occupation. Now, in the staff report, it states how that this handcuffs the applicant to 3 years and then a second agreement for a maximum of 6. So I think I don't see the change in 4.10 in the red line version that would remove those restrictions. I can understand 3-year terms to be renewed every 3 years, but it seems, how am I reading this wrong? Over to, through you to staff. Nancy, Owen.
Unfortunately, I am looking at this on behalf of the corporate officer who is not here today, so I'm just going to have a quick look. Give me one moment, please.
It is in the red line, so it says,
I was just gonna, perhaps I could start while Ms. Owen's looking up. I think the difference is between a community organization and a private individual. So that's the community organization are limited with the years. Private individuals would be up to council to determine, depending on the scope and what this looks like, what the difference would be. Like if you wanted to assign a different time frame to that versus the various licenses to occupies like we have for community garden and the horseshoe pitch are 2 examples. So this is just to add the private applicant part to it and put different parameters around that because there's different conditions with private versus community organizations.
yeah, so it's an addition. The rest remains the same. Councillor Pearson?
Okay, and to the chair. So 4.10 is I think where section 4 states that the term, the license, we had a fairly robust discussion around this. So through the chair or to the chair, you're saying that there's a difference between private and community-based organizations, right? I recall, and I'm going to go back and look at my notes, that we're okay with the 3 on the front end, but the additional 3-year sounds like it's with 1. And I think that we changed that wording, if I can remember correctly, to at the discretion of council.
No, there was some, I think when this came forward before, I thought that there was some thing where we couldn't go beyond 5 years. So we could only do 3 years and then an additional 3 years. And there was something around some limitation. I don't recall about it going beyond 5 years. We have to do something else. Some sort of disposition of land or something? Is that? Mr. Marshall, I know.
Yeah, so when municipalities are doing a license of occupation, anything over 5 years requires an actual subdivision of the property because it's considered beyond a certain time frame to be that they're kind of taking ownership of the land or use of the land. So you have to have a severance to create a lot for that. So in order to avoid creating a severed lot for this, you go through a shorter period of time than the 5 year period. But what you're saying is one additional, like, could they have multiple additions of three?
And that's,
Right.
I thought we agreed to.
Right. So I'm not sure about that, but just explaining why you don't go over three.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
And can I?
So meaning like, so you could have not just one additional 3-year, but you could have
Yeah.
multiple additional.
Just-
Yeah, I don't remember. Go ahead. I
And,
remember this, but I don't remember the rationale.
yeah, the discussion was is that if we thought that, because it clearly says here in 4.1, it says that with one additional 3-year, with the word with one means at the end of the second 3 years, then they're out.
And that's it, yeah.
So, and that caused a lot of angst with one of our community organizations.
But I think the intention on why, and I don't remember if there's a legal piece there, was that due to our limits of available parkland for usable pieces, that other groups may then have the opportunity to also access the land, and it's not just first in, never out.
Yeah.
It's meant to also allow, you have your time. Is this now going to be the activity that remains and it may shift somewhere else? Or is it then an opportunity for another user group to come in and use the land? Otherwise, you would never see. Right? So it was meant to then allow for other groups, but I don't remember if there's any legal on this.
Oh. And I am getting old, but my memory is that I think we deleted the word one. I'm gonna go back and look, so that we just said that additional 3-year extension term exercised upon the district's consent with additional 3-year term. So it didn't imply that it was only one more time. That was we had a fairly robust discussion around.
We did. I'm sorry, I don't remember. I'm not seeing that red line. So to me, we might have discussed it, but we might not have directed staff to make a change. And it would have just been the policy. We talked a lot about it, but then adopted a policy because the only new pieces in here is what is red.
Okay.
So, Councillor Bateman.
Well, so if I understand this right, so if I'm Sun River Garden and we've just recently agreed to a 1-year term, I think it was it not? Anyway, don't let me get hung up in those details, but if a service, an occupation agreement, the second extension, it ends and a request for proposals goes out, and of course the current applicant is absolutely welcome and expected, if all is going well, to seek another cycle.
Ms. Gray?
Maybe something to remind council of, this is just a policy, so at any time council can waive their policy. This is not a bylaw, so if it doesn't work in a specific situation down the road, it's something that council has the ability to waive.
And that is probably where we landed, is we would have something, but I'm sorry, I can't find an earlier draft. It would have been. Well, we have the red line addition in front of us, but the only change to it is to add the private interest part. The other part is as it was. Councillor Beddoes?
My recollection is that we allowed a 1 3-year renewal, and that was it. And then it came back up for grabs for anybody. But as Councillor Bateman said, the original people can ask for it. That's in fairness to the community. You can't lock in one group for forever and ever. And 6 years seemed to be what we hit upon. So that's my recollection for what it's worth.
Well, and that's what's here in front of us today. So, and that's where I think the understanding is that council could waive the policy and do something different, which is probably the case, but the policy itself remains unaltered, aside from the red part. Okay. So I will call the question on this. All those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, 9.4 is appointment of 2026 election officials. So that would be that Greg Lois be appointed as Chief Election Officer for the 2026 District of Sooke Local Government General Election, and that Nancy Owen be appointed as Deputy Chief Election Officer for the 2026 District of Sooke Local Government General Election. Moved by Counselor Bateman and seconded by Counselor Beddoes. Any comments? Anything? Any pretty straightforward? Go ahead, Counselor Haldane.
Yeah, I just want to bring up, so during the by-election, and the only reason I heard about it is just because I was involved in it, but more advanced polling stations, more places where people can vote. I mean, they were fairly good lineups. I mean, for crazy enough for that. Is it possible that during this process, we can have a few more? We used to, back in the day, we used to use the bottom of the community hall, the high school, upstairs. We had a few extra places we could go to it. And I would just like that if we're gonna push this thing through, can we have our guy look at a few more extra things? I mean, depending on who's running it, depends on how it gets run. So can we, as a council, ask for a couple extra early polling spots or things like that?
Yep. So to that, we have a I don't remember where it lies, but when we do an election, there's sort of a process that I thought council sort of endorses. Maybe it's in my mind palace somewhere, where we set out, there's the advanced polls and here's the locations of those. And there's always been 2 advanced polls, a special poll at Air Manor. And then the general election day, of course. It's a bit off of this, but I'm just wondering, when do we discuss that process?
I'm not entirely sure in the timeline, but obviously well in advance, which is why we're currently bringing this forward so that the corporate officer and myself can start that process. But duly noted, of course, we certainly do need to look at where we propose all of these locations and how many. Polls will be coming forward. I believe that it's all laid out as well through the BC elections guidelines as well. And so but that certainly will be coming forward.
I would just make a comment that personally, I find it when the advanced polls are here in council chambers, very, very challenging. And I say that because when I've brought my father here in a wheelchair, like it was a push to park and to get him
Yes.
uphill here. Like it was really, really difficult. Sometimes the lift malfunctions, and then because our furniture and everything and the cabling, this whole thing was a nightmare trip hazard. I almost tripped onto him and knocked him over. So I would just recommend that we don't use chambers as a polling station, and instead either the dining room of the community hall would work, or some more accessible place. Because even upstairs at the community hall is a nightmare. I had to take my mom there, and that was a disaster in a federal or provincial election. So if we can work anything out with the schools or something for advanced polls, and then ideally general election at the high school seemed to work, ample parking, total in and out, all of that. But that we find a more accessible location, and please don't use this space. It's a headache. Thank you, Councillor Pearson.
Sounds a little counterintuitive, but can we have this come back to a committee of the whole for suggestions? And
Not this, because we need to make these appointments so they can get on with the work.
right,
But I think in terms of an actual, what does the election look like? Could be
Yeah.
a good motion arising that I'll entertain from you in just a moment.
okay.
But not this particular one, because otherwise we don't have anyone to do it.
Right. And the reason I ask is that to Councillor Haldane's point and Councillor Bateman's and yours, is that in that last by-election, as a councillor, I received several complaints, and I will say they edged on concerns. There was long lineups, people had accessibility issues coming here. And it went right down to colors that were displayed. So I heard some complaints about different colors that were displayed. So interesting. Like I think at a committee of the whole, we could clarify a lot of issues around those guys.
Okay, so let's get a
Anyway.
motion arising from you on that. Ms. Gray?
Councillor McMath has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor McMath.
I just think staff were fully capable of sorting it out, and I wanted us to call the question.
Okay, we're just about there until I saw your hand. So we are going to call the question on this. All those in favor, please? And that's carried unanimously. Would you like to make a motion arising, Councillor Pearson?
Not so good at making motions arising, but my motion would be to have a report from the Chief Electoral Officer at a committee of the whole for discussion with council. I don't know. How's that?
On the, regarding the 2026 general election?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second? And that's seconded by Councillor Haldane. Okay, does staff have that? I know we're sort of double tasking here. I know you're double dutied here tonight, so this will come forward for discussion there.
Yeah.
Councillor Bateman?
I'm absolutely in favor of that, and I hope at this committee of the whole, we can talk generally about voter turnout, historical trends of voter turnout, the very great disappointment of that 29% turnout in 2022, citizens' rights and responsibilities in terms of voting, and all of that good stuff, which is required prior to a general election.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're gonna have a general conversation about it because then I think it also, even a letter that I'll be doing up for our newcomers will then remind new residents, oh, by the way, you may be eligible to vote. So there's even those pieces that are coming forward. So that makes sense. And then in some cases, a reminder, candidates need to get the vote out too, but we need to create an opportunity that is fair and equitable as best as we can. Okay? I will call the question on the motion arising. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, new business. Go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I just.
In the microphone.
Sorry, still a little sleepy. Miss Belford brought an item up. Is this the time that I can bring it up? New business?
Well, yeah, I need a motion from you.
I would like to have a discussion in council in regards to Miss Belford's presentation. Is that good enough or
I would say maybe
something more defined?
that council directs staff to bring the proposed UBCM resolution to the land use committee for
Yeah, I would like.
discussion.
Yeah,
How about
I'd like
that?
something more on it. Yes, I'd be happy with that resolution. I think it's very important and this inconsistency throughout the province and I want some fairness for the landowner and the homeowner. And right now, I'm not sure that's there. So yes, if you could put that particular motion, I would make it.
Second.
Okay, so I'll just ask staff if they capture that and I can just say that Councillor Bateman, we're really rushing this for AVICC. So I would just do the and that
It's UBCM.
council directs staff to prepare a high-level report on item 6.1 for deliberation by the land use committee for consideration of a submission to the Union of BC Municipalities.
I'm happy with that.
I think it's something that could go to land use and then flow to council on the consent agenda. Okay, so that is moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Pearson. Anything from anyone else? No, I'll call a question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you for that. I guess that flowed right into notice of motion, but that's okay. It is sort of new business. Is there a notice of motion that anyone would like to read into the record? Or sorry, I was going to go to Councillor Haldane. Sorry, there was something you asked about and now I don't recall what the item was.
It was Bill 25, it was in the consent agenda, and I only had a question about what I'd read in there and maybe some confirmation on how we deal with it. Is it possible to discuss it?
So what I'll do then, was it correspondence or where is it?
Well,
Item 8.8.
yeah.
Oh, 8.8.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, sorry. Oh, I see. Okay, so this one here, this came from the land use committee.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I would need to then, as your chair, I'm gonna bring this as a reconsideration item now. You can challenge me on that ruling if you like, and then we can discuss it. So I'm bringing this back for reconsideration. We had just simply endorsed the land use committee's deliberations, but now I'll reconsider it and have it here for council to discuss, but it's gonna go into item 13. I'm still gonna make you wait to the items removed from consent agenda where it should go.
Okay, perfect.
All right, we'll put
Um,
it there.
And then, if this is the new business portion, if I had a question about something, this is where you would do a motion in the new business
A
portion?
notice, well, it's the next section. So 10 is new business and then 11 is notice of motion. So this is where if you
So-
wanted to motivate or enter in a notice of motion to discuss at the next council meeting, you would read it into the record now.
Okay, at this point, it's really, it's more of a confirmation of what's going on in the community right now on some stuff. So I was gonna hope for some clarification. Is there a part where you can do clarification within this agenda? Or should I write a motion?
You should write a motion.
Okay, I'll do that then.
Did you want to do that for tonight or do you want to have that at the, like, write one for the next meeting?
Well, I could do a motion. I'm not articulate by any means.
Well, why don't you give it a go and then it'll be the case, you can
Okay.
read it out and then it'll come to
And
the
maybe
next meeting.
Nancy or yourself could help me with how it's gonna sound, I suppose, right?
Always.
Okay, so I guess my motion would be, so we're running into an issue and I went to the Builders Association meeting.
You just have to be a bit more like, what is the action you want? Do you
Okay.
want to discuss, like, we had two members of the public raise some pieces around clarity around the DPA. So is that what you're asking?
Yes,
Okay, so why don't it be something that council directs staff to work with the chair of the land use committee to hold a discussion around the implementation of the DPA 3 in the OCP, or to discuss implementation of the OCP. You can leave it a bit more general. I just think it should be at the land use committee because
Sure.
they're land use people. It's land use.
and I have no issue with that. My big thing would be to clarify the term we're using all the time, and we've used it as counselors, we use it as staff. It is the misinformation term with no clarity behind it. So if we're gonna use that term, and we've used it quite frequently, the whole idea here is to give that term with examples. So if there's misinformation, fair enough, it's no sense and no different than anybody accusing anybody of doing something, and then you don't tell them what you're accusing them of. Just come up with misinformation, and this is the section or the term or whatever. Right now, within the public, and I know it's been brought up by more than one.
Okay, you're getting deep into
Yeah,
motivation here.
so I don't know how.
I think, but I understand where you're going. I think it's more, I think, just
Misinformation.
maybe something. I think it would just make sense for the land use committee to discuss the OCP and just to have sort of a working discussion about it and to have a bit of a back and forth on it. I'm looking at staff now asking like, help me with this. How can we just put it on the land use discussion for March? March might be a good, do you need a motion from council or is there a way of, can it just be added to the land use? Because we direct stuff to the land use agenda, so.
Yeah, I just so that we're clear as to what we're bringing forward to the Land Use and Development Committee, I'd just like to get maybe like, is it? Because I mean, we as staff could say, here's what we're doing in order to provide clarity to this issue. And so we've put out the bulletins, we're working on development permit area maps where so that you can put in your property and see if you're in a DP area, development permit area, like so is it what staff's doing in order to increase the clarity of this thing? Is it
Yeah,
to address all the issues, the pros and, or the different concerns that staff and the community are having, or like, I'm just like to know what we're exactly bringing forward.
I would suggest perhaps to the comments that Mrs. Lurs raised around the work that staff is doing with the mapping and the like, that maybe you showcase that at the land use meeting and see there if that will help clarify some of those. And then meanwhile, Mr. Malcolm is here, he could invite his peers to that particular meeting and give some input there. And
That sounds-
start with that,
Sure.
and then the land use committee can say, okay, we get that, or maybe this language here needs to be finessed a bit. So I would just suggest we start there. And then see, this is good, that council direct staff with the chair of the land use committee to discuss the OCP and development areas, DPAs. Would that work for the March land use meeting? That's coming up pretty soon. I will be away for that. Go ahead, Miss Owen.
Sorry, through the chair. One, yes, we could certainly put that on if the director of planning is good with that. And two, I just want to note that Councillor McMath has her hand up.
Okay, I see that. So rather than do a notice of motion, well, it is a notice of motion, but I'm going to ask council first to waive notice so that we can just make this motion tonight. Because otherwise it'll go to the next council meeting, which will be the April land use meeting.
I move that we waive.
So
Second.
motion to waive notice by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Bateman. I'll call the question on waiving notice. All in favor, I'll go to Councillor McMath.
Just in regards to this notice of motion, would it be helpful if we send specific notes where we're looking for clarity with concerns of the community members so that staff is adequately prepared at this meeting? Like, so for example, like one of the bulletins that I have a question about is the foreshore with the 15-meter buffer. So would it be helpful if we sent an email where we're looking for clarification, or the community is?
Yes, I think it would be, because otherwise it'll be, let's have another meeting and another notice of motion. So if there's ways of having this at the land use committee, that would at the one, that would make sense, yes.
And whom should we send those or CC those to?
Send them to our corporate officer.
You can certainly send them to corporate services and or planning directly, but either one will make sure that it gets to the right individuals.
Okay, so corporate and planning, and then I'll just CC council so we're not getting duplicates.
Yep, that sounds good. Thank you, Councillor McMath. Okay, so now we're on the motion. So I'm going to, it's been read. So Councillor Pearson.
I'm going to ask, or I'm going to make a motion of an amendment, and it's just an addition after the bracket of thing and what we learned so far, because I think we talked about
Okay,
it.
just stop.
Okay,
Let's
that's
get
it.
the
Just I'll
amendment.
leave it there.
And what we have learned.
Thus far.
So that's a little, how about we just put DPAs, et cetera,
Okay,
and areas of concern, because adding in the we sort of change, it makes us,
It'll get expanded at the meeting, I'm
It-
guessing.
yeah.
yes. I would say, and development and implementation process.
Yep, I'm fine with
Let's
that.
do that, an implementation process. So that's an amendment by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Because that will then cover off what Councillor McMath just raised. So all those in favor of the amendment, please. Any opposed? None opposed. The main motion is amended. You've added that amendment. Councillor Haldane, this was your motion. Sorry, I didn't go to you. Would you like to add any more? Is this any motivation, or are you comfortable?
No, I'm
with this?
happy with the discussion. I mean, there's so much ambiguous stuff going around the community and accusatory stuff back and forth. I'd like to get back to the spot where we're working together to try and rectify this and come up with a solution to it, because it doesn't help to divide ourselves or the community or whatever. We need to get to the crux of this and get it figured out, because all this innuendo and stuff isn't good and it's not healthy for anybody or anything. So I'd be happy if between staff and the builders group and just some community members who are asking about questions, if we could just get back to somewhere where we at least trust each other and understand this is where we're headed, this is where we're going. Because so far it's just been kind of back and forth on what to expect. And the fact that we lack some mapping and we're working on it right now, I mean, that stuff should have probably been part of the original application, but it wasn't. And I get it. We were time constraints and stuff like that. But I'm not blaming anybody for anything, but we're at least in a position now where we need to clarify. So then there just is, somebody comes forward, says that mapping says we don't have to do it. This says we're good. This says we're good. And then we're good to go. Then there's nobody, you know, sitting from the cheap seats, throwing stones going, I think it said this and it should have said that. There's just, I don't want to read any more stuff online anymore. It's just getting to the point now where it's going crazy. So.
Well, I'm encouraged to hear you speak that way, Councillor Haldane. I though wonder, I might take a bet to say that within 3 months, there'll be something else regarding it because of the season that we're in, but maybe I'd love to be proven wrong. So that's just saying. But no, I think that would be very helpful. In terms though of staff, I'll just sort of push back that if they had come forward prior to the public hearing and said, look at all the mapping that we're doing, then there would be others that would challenge them saying, you're now pushing council into a place where they can't be open-minded. You've done all this work without their endorsement, and that would be this whole other thing. So they kind of had to pause, get adoption, and then go. So I just wanted to add that they couldn't have done that scenario because it would have been attacked if they had done so. But we're here now and we wanted to at least roll on and find something else to argue about as we head into the election. So that's good. Okay, so I will then look forward to this potentially online, or sorry, Councillor Bateman, go ahead.
I'd just like to throw in a few comments. Yes, I think this next step is critical. You know, with the lack of an OCP monitoring and implementation committee, which was a recommendation of the 2010 OCP, and which we discussed back on December 8th. The Land Use Committee is the right place to take this. I think it's, you know, this process that's unfolding, there are these categories of misinformation, okay? So there's misinformation, which is just people not quite connecting. And I think that's where the issues lie. There's also something called disinformation, which is a deliberate act of spreading incorrect information. And then there's malinformation, which is a deliberate act of attempting to do some violence effectively. So I remain really confident. This process is what's necessary. Councillor Beddoes mentioned this, and I'll just speak for you now. This OCP was always intended to be amended. They all are. So this is the process to reach that next stage. And I hope that all participants will definitely bring chapter and verse of where their issues are with direct reference to the document as it exists today.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I welcome this. It's anytime we can produce some clarity. This was a very long document and there are going to be some growing pains with putting out interpretations. I think staff has done a very good job so far of trying to answer everybody's question. So I think it's a great area to do it. I share Councillor Haldane's concern about us and them, and it's our community, it's us. And it's a great discussion, and I think it's the right area to do it. So I look forward to it.
Okay, so we'll look forward to this on the agenda for the land use meeting, which will be the first week of March. I myself will be attending the FCM board meeting, so I won't be there, but I can watch. They are webcast though, land use, so I can watch that.
Yes.
And prior to the regular meeting, which I will be in attendance for. And then we'll just see how the chair is, but we'll make a determination about that as we get closer. Hopefully Councillor St. Pierre will be back. And we did say that the land use committee, to your point, would be the appropriate venue to discuss this. And then if there is an absolute collision, would make that known. So there may even be a need to have more than one meeting, but we'll start there. Okay. I will call the question. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Pearson wanted to speak again.
Well, I think that we've gone down a terrible road, disinformation, misinformation, and people are getting labeled back and forth in our community. And I protest that. I think that that's the wrong way. We're better than that as a community. We always have been better than that as a community. Yes, we can have fights and we can, disagree or agree to disagree, whatever way you want to do it. But again, that we're following a model that's in the world and I am not going to say it, south of the border. That's the way that they, you're in this camp and I'm in that camp. And the way to resolve issues is face to face, talking about the issues, the implementation. We heard it from somebody tonight. And if we're going to be better at governance, then we have to take our lumps where appropriate and give our lumps where appropriate and have those discussions about making our community better. And labeling somebody on the other side is not the way to do it. Labeling somebody as disinformative or, that's not the way to move forward. We have to work in this community. So anyway, that's it.
Well, we all have to live here too, right? So that's important also. All right, I'm going to call the question then. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. Anything else on notice of motion from anyone? Councillor Bateman has one.
There it is. So this is the notice that council directed.
Microphone.
Microphone. The council directs staff to prepare a high-level report on 3D modeling technology and its potential application to land use planning in Sooke, including the OCP recommended update of the town center plan for consideration by the Land Use and Development Committee.
Okay, so this is read in the record. It'll come to the next regular meeting for actual debate and discussion. Okay. Was that it? Okay, thank you. We will move then to correspondence, 12.1 OCP transportation. So this one here would be, the motion would be that council receive the correspondence for information by Councillor Beddoes. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Haldane. And to speak to it, go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I brought this forward. There's 3 letters actually, and this has been going on for a considerable length of time. And Miss Irwin up there is just beside herself waiting for clarification. And I understand that staff has reached out to her and in regards to the OCP and the yellow lines, which from the Transportation Master Plan. But my concern is that the surveys that were done on the property, somebody has discovered another peg underneath an old abandoned car. And so it calls into question of where the surveys are. And it's very important because one of these surveys indicate that the septic tank, which he has CRD approval for before incorporation, that it is on our land and some of it is on our land. So I think there needs to be, I'd love for staff to have Ms. Irwin come in, speak with her directly, and I'd be happy to sit in on it if the staff felt it was necessary. But she's a very unhappy lady with what's gone on up there. And I know there's things about Verity and what they're doing up there, which is out of our control. But she's saying that their fencing is on her property. We need it clarified. And if the survey that was done by Verity is invalid because of this finding this marker, then it needs to be done again. But we need to have some clarity. We need to have staff sit down, and I go to what, Councillor Haldane, sometimes a face-to-face meeting. And I think this is a time for a face-to-face meeting with her. And I'm sort of getting a little tired of seeing these same things come up. Nothing we can do about the OCP Transportation Master Plan. That's a document that's already adopted that shows possible conduits of transportation that we all want. Whether it comes to be is another thing. So my request, and I don't know whether I need it in a motion or maybe staff could just take it on, is to set up a meeting, with Miss Irwin, and get this thing ironed out. I don't, just some clarification again. Is the survey valid? If it's not valid, then we need to get another one done. Is Verity's survey valid? If not, they need to do it again. If Verity has some fencing on her property, they need to remove it. If the septic tank is on some of our property, then we either get some sort of a variance because it was done in the old CRD days and they approved it, and we're not gonna ding a homeowner with something like that. So I just want it clarified and I want it done fairly quickly. I'm tired of dealing with this, so I don't know how I put that in motion.
Okay, so thank you very much, Councillor Beddoes. We wanted to wait till you were back
Thank you.
because just to understand the motivation on why, so that's
Yeah.
why it's here tonight. So I'll ask staff, do you require a motion from, or can you just reach out? Perhaps Ms. Gray and Mr. Marshall, or I'm not sure. I'll leave it to our staff to decide who should be in the meeting, but I think just to reach out, or do you need a motion for that?
Through your worship, I don't need a motion at this time. I wasn't aware. I think this maybe got lost in the transition of the director of operations, because I believe our manager of engineering has followed up, but let me just, if you give me a second, day or two to take this away and I can follow up.
Yeah.
And if a motion's required, I can bring that back forward to the mayor and clarify that. But at this stage, I can just follow up with staff internally and try and get that meeting set up.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, I'm happy with that.
Okay.
Brought to the forefront.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, just, and I appreciate that Councillor Beddoes has brought that forward. But named a company about 3 or 4 times in your statement, and I'm not sure that's the company. I know that they do work up there, who the landowner is, and there's a responsibility. I think you know, using a company name isn't appropriate at council table. I think it's the applicant or the proponent. Just
Okay.
I'm not calling out council.
Going by what I said.
Yeah, I know, but
He mentioned that, so I mentioned.
Okay, that's fine. We have had that particular entity present to council in the past. I would just suggest going forward, rather than wait, you can call out a point of order at the
Yeah.
time. Okay, and then we can course correct. All right?
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Haldane?
Yeah, just for clarity, and I'm sure staff would back me up on this, is surveys aren't willy-nilly, they're exact. They're done by satellite, they're perfect, there's like our GIS mapping, everything else on the planet. This lady might have found a peg, she might have whatever, it could even be a metal rod she found on the ground, but the point is, surveys are exact, and we get them on every single piece of property, they're done legally, and everything is done by a survey company now that stamps it, they're professionals, so believe me, they didn't miss something. They know exactly which pegs they're doing. They know where they're going. It's all mathematical and so on. So I get that people are upset about some things that are happening in their neighborhood. Same lady complains about traffic that's going to be happening one day or whatever. But we have to look at it from a practical point of view, especially in this. And I get it. She's not happy. And so she's lashing out and stuff. But in the end, it comes down to companies are working in the town. They're doing everything by the book, legally, with professionals, and there is no ambiguity there. It's
No,
done.
but sometimes there is an impact and it's
Yeah.
when you're living next to development, it can be unsettling. I'll go to Councillor McMath and then back to Beddoes and then I'll call the question. Go ahead, Councillor McMath.
I think there's 2 pieces. Councillor Beddoes has brought this to the meeting because it's something that's been heavily advocated for, but the taxpayer and we don't know where it sits right now. So he's just looking for proper customer service and closure to ease that anxiety and that hardship that that resident is experiencing. They also mentioned that there's multiple surveyors and there is confusion. So they're looking for help and clarity. And I do think the face-to-face meeting is going to help a lot with that because while we use these documents day to day for a constituent, sometimes it is a lot of information to go through and they just need help with understanding, and that's all she's asking for.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beddoes?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I do appreciate what Councillor Haldane has said, and if that's the case, I'd be happy, but it does need to be explained to this lady in a face-to-face meeting. And if it is what it is, then we can deal with it. But again, going back to Councillor McMath, there seems to be some discrepancy on who says what. So again, face-to-face, resolve it. Even if the person's not happy with it, that there's some evidence in front of them that it is what it is. So enough's enough. Again, misinformation, clarify it. Staff is good at that and they are going to look into it, and I have all the faith that they're going to do it. So I'm happy with whatever they come up with as long as they talk to this lady for face to face.
And we've heard that's going to happen, so we'll more to come. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. 12.2 is 7G, request for clarification and urgent response regarding new official community plan provisions. So this was pulled by Councillor Pearson. So the motion would be that council receive the correspondence for information by Councillor Pearson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Haldane. So go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
And given that we made a motion tonight to forward to the land use committee, the implementation of the new OCP, the DPAs, I'm hoping this can go to the land use committee as well as part of that discussion.
Okay, so you want to forward this correspondence to the land use, so that'll be an amendment then, because we're just otherwise going to receive and
Yep.
file. So the amendment would be that council forward the correspondence to the land use for information.
Yep.
Okay, that's an amendment by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. So on the amendment to send it to land use, makes sense. All those in favor? Oh, Mr. Marshall had his hand up before I called the question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, there's been a lot of correspondence related to this, so I'm just wondering, should we make a motion to include all the correspondence related to this? Because there's been staff responses and public
Yes.
comment and back and forth, so I'm happy to, if you are happy to make that amendment, we can certainly try and gather all the correspondence to date, and that'll help as part of the discussion.
Thank you. And I didn't have that in front of me, so I couldn't make that motion.
Okay, so we just called we already amended it, so I'll entertain a new amendment. And that council directs staff to send all related correspondence to the land use.
Yeah.
Mr. Marshall seems quite confident he has it all together, so. Okay, related correspondence together, so that way you can see both the information in one place. Okay, so I will make that amendment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Haldane is seconding it, so I'm just going with what Mr. Marshall had said. That makes sense. So call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. So now we have the twice amended motion. It's going to the land use. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay. Item 8.8 has been removed, so we'll go back to that. This here came to the land use. And Councillor Haldane would like to just get a bit more information, and here it is. So I'm going to put the resolution on the floor first, and that is that council received the report that council directs staff to prepare and return with proposed amendments to zoning bylaw number 600 to address Bill 25, the Housing and Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act 2025, small scale multi-unit housing. That would have been adopted by consent, but now that it's in front of us, we have to make this motion. So is there a mover for that? Moved by I'll go with Councillor Haldane because you pulled it, and you can second it, Councillor Pearson. Okay, so over to Councillor Haldane.
Yeah, so with Bill 25, and I think I've talked to our CAO about this recently, but what are the DCC responsibilities with the density amendments coming from Bill 25? They are being applied at this time, but can't find where they're deriving from. Was this part of Bill 44 expectations, or is this a Bill 25? How can we deal with that one component of it? Because there's an expectation right now from staff to charge the density lift with development cost charges. Is that what's expected from the province, or were they looking for a more reasonable way to get housing off the ground? This isn't going to be reasonable. It's going to be, $10,000 or $15,000 a door more for every uplift. So,
Good question, Mr. Marshall. Do you have that answer?
So Bill 25 is trying to get municipalities to ensure that their zoning doesn't restrict various forms of the 4 to 6 units per single family property. And we gave the examples at the Land Use Development Committee that there are certain zones that permit single family, duplex, accessory buildings, small, secondary suites and small buildings in the backyard. But we neglected when we did our zoning amendments to include triplexes and fourplexes as a potential type of housing that would be permitted in these zones. So inadvertently, and we're not the only ones that did this, we are limiting the style of homes that are permitted in these uses. You can still get to 4 units. You can do a duplex, you can do 2 duplexes, you can do a duplex or a duplex with 2, accessory or secondary suites in each of the duplexes to get to 4. So you can get to the 4. We're following the provincial regulations, but we're not permitting triplexes and fourplexes as part of the land, the styles of homes that are possible in those zones. So I'm not sure how that relates to your discussion around development cost charges.
Well, through the chair, the development cost charges are being applied to a duplex as well. So how do we create affordable housing if we're going to use some of our old rules to apply to this new stuff? They're trying to find ways to get more density on a single family lot. So if there's going to be an uplift of development cost charges of $10,000 to $15,000 a door or whatever our costs are, I don't know exactly what those are. That's going to be an increased cost for somebody trying to do something. The average person who's going to try and do a duplex on a single family lot is going to have to pay for building permits and do all this stuff. Are we expecting to charge development cost charges on all these uplifts that are coming out in these new provincial regulations with 44 or 25 or however?
We might need to take that one away and come back. Like this direction is just to it'll return back to council with those changes. So maybe at that time we can have that answer
Sure, yeah.
available. It's sort of like now because Mr. Riley isn't here. And it's more, but it's an interesting point that you raise because we were just looking more at the zoning. So I think when this will be returning to council, it may be the case where we can return and have that information so it's clear as opposed to be like, now on the spot, can you answer this question? Because I really have no idea.
And the one more question I do have, and this came up at the, I guess it was a land use meeting. Anyhow, when you do the province is now through the building code and provincial legislation has allowed you to have a suite that can be the same size as the existing house. It could be bigger than 90 square meters, which was originally allowed. And you can have your principal residence could be your 1,000 square foot suite, and your rental unit could be the 4-bedroom house that you used to have on the property. Sooke's rules don't allow it yet. So can we bring forward something that will allow us to conform with Bill 25 or 44 that will allow homeowners to be able to still stay on their own property? They're going to have to they might want to call their detached suite now their principal residence, and they give their kids the big house because they've got kids and grandkids and everything else growing up in there. We need to find some flexibility within our zoning bylaw and or our zones period to allow for this with these new regulations. Because I think you're going to find most people will want to build a suite or a secondary home. And I think Councillor Beddoes we talked there a few weeks ago and stuff, whatever, looking for the downsize and do different stuff. This will give you the opportunity to do that. And you can still go to your bank and say, my principal residence now is going to be my 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom house, not my 4-bedroom that I'm going to give to the kids, so on. So we need some flexibility within our own rules. And I know our rules are it's been 4 or 5 years since we've updated them. If we could come up with something more flexible in some writing. I have no idea how I'd write that in a motion.
Well, in this case, that's where our staff are taking this away to make those changes. So here, having that input, when that report comes back, then we can see.
Yeah.
Because there's an amendment that's coming on this. So this would be the timely, I think you don't have to make a motion tonight, but rather when those amendments come back to council is to then look at the report then and see if it's addressed that, or then would be the right time to make a motion, because the bylaw itself will go through readings. Being a zoning bylaw, then you could we can
Yeah.
do that at that time.
Well,
So,
and the province is trying to push flexibility, but municipalities haven't quite adopted all the new flexibility options that are built into building codes and even these bills. So I'm hoping we could throw everything on the table. Maybe it's a land use committee meeting that we do this at. I'm not sure, but
yeah, and that's where I think it'll depend on what that looks like when it comes back, because then council could be, if it's not quite capturing council's will, it can be referred to the land use committee for discussion, or it'll be captured one or the other.
and it will also address our inability, as Jeff can tell you, that people are trying to rent out through VRBO or Airbnb their houses and stuff. And it says you can't rent out your principal residence, you can only rent out your detached one. If your principal residence was now your detached suite or the 1,000 square foot home, you could rent out the big house for and then still maintain that you've got principal residence on your own property. So that would give some flexibility that was not brought up actually at the meeting there the other day through economic development stuff and that. So anyhow, it's just some
Okay.
stuff.
Mr. Marshall, thank you for that, Councillor Haldane.
Yeah, so on the second point, so at the Land Use Development Committee, we also brought a report forward on short-term accommodations and making some amendments for clarity around that. So that certainly can be incorporated into that report. And yeah, I think certainly let us know if you have particular issues you want us to look at. I mean, the whole point of the report on the Bill 25 was to say, before staff goes to a lot of trouble and time and effort to work on amendments to the zoning bylaw in relation to this this new legislation, we wanted to get guidance, well, support from council that this is something you want us to work on. So we're getting the indication here that yes, you would like us to do the work. So so feel free to provide us with suggestions you have that would work with would be associated with that. So that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and you can always follow up and just schedule time to meet with Mr. Marshall, just to
Yeah, I'd be happy to do.
share some of that, because my recollection is that we also do have to adopt this by June. So there is a bit of a time on this. And I think if the province absorbed more of its download, we could actually, okay, I'll leave it at that. I will call the question on this one. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. We'll move to council verbal reports. Councillor Beddoes, welcome back from your vacation. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. In place of our wounded councillor St. Pierre, I attended the Sooke Region Food Security Network meeting. That was, I think, 2 weeks ago. And we heard from the young MBA students who are proposing the Sooke Food Hub or POD commercial kitchen venture, which is a very ambitious project. They continue onwards with it. They're looking for district involvement to help move this forward. And I think I'm not clear on what the next steps are with it, but I think there's ongoing conversation with Ms. Scott regarding that group. They've identified some potential long-term tenants, and it's an exciting piece of community economic development to see potential value-added food products being created right here in Sooke. Also that meeting, Kwantlen College professor Kent Mullinex was there. He's now a Sooke resident. He has plans to develop a Vancouver Island food biosphere plan in the academic lingo that he speaks. And it would look at how, very practically, how the island can improve its food security over the next 25 years, right? So how can we begin to grow what we need in a proper import-export balance? So there was that. I was at the meeting of the CRD Arts Commission the other week. The operating grants amounting to 2.4 million were distributed to 26 Greater Victoria organizations. Interestingly, yet again, no Sooke arts organization falls into that category, which is the major lion's share of funding through the CRD Arts Commission. And that's a bit concerning because we do invest $45,000 annually into that service. And we're one of 7 CRD municipalities that do so. And there are definitely Sooke art groups do tap into the project and other grant streams. So that's the good news on that front. So more to come on that, I think, as we go into budget. And we did have our final Community Economic Development Committee meeting in this chamber. That was last week. The mayor joined us. We both thanked the committee, Gwen Fisher, Catherine Strongwind, Scott Taylor, and council colleagues Beddoes, St. Pierre, and Pearson, and especially district staff for their support, which was above and beyond what you anticipated initially. We opted to go to monthly meetings, and that created a bit of a tangle, I think, for staff and the amount of time we expected from them. But we did put through a really, I feel, strong motion that went through on the consent agenda, and that is to direct district staff to include cultural and arts land use considerations in future employment lands strategic planning, and that these also be considered in the next Sooke zoning bylaw. So there's all sorts of good things that potentially are being done elsewhere. And that includes density bonusing. I don't have them in front of me, so I can't pitch them, but you've probably heard enough from me. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. Councillor Pearson.
Yeah. Wandafuka Water Commission meeting, February 2nd, 1:30. January 13th, we started spilling over the dam, which I told you about on the Big Water Commission, below average to mid-December, and then Mother Nature opened up and we have lots of water spilling over the dam now. John Rogers was appointed to the Water Commission Advisory Panel. Mary Wagner is now the vice chair for both committees, the Wandafuka Water Supply and the Regional Water Supply. 2025 was a great year for the Wandafuka Water, with 0 water main breaks in 2025. They are replacing all the meters within the Wandafuka area. They have a target of about 2,500 a year. There's about 26,700 meters that are in the Wandafuka water area. And they only got 1,300 done in 2025, but they're going to ramp that up. And there's about 20,000 that their radio technology will come to the end of its useful life. And that's why the water meters are going to be replaced, which if they start malfunctioning, it's when the warranty's off, the all of those kind of things, it will demand more in-person meter reading. So it's an expensive process. I attended Wounded Warrior on February the 1st with Councillor or Deputy Mayor Haldane doing a presentation at the Wounded Warrior. It's always good to see that. The district contribution to Wounded Warriors of $5,000 was extremely well received by Wounded Warriors, and Councillor Haldane and myself watched them start their journey towards Sydney from the Sooke Legion. February 5th, had a joint meeting with School District 62 of Sooke. And the current growth is near 0, and I attended with the mayor, Councillor Bateman, and Councillor Haldane. So it was a good roundtable discussion, lots of interesting ins and outs with the school district. Interesting, I think, is sometimes we think that we have the concerns and they mirror our concerns. Safety at John Muir was an issue. So, you know, our thoughts are their thoughts. I think you can't separate them. It's not like, we told you. It's everyone's thinking the same thing. So interesting discussion around some of the attendance in schools and some of the programs that may fit into Sooke Elementary School. Anyway, that's it for me.
Okay, Councillor Haldane.
Nope, Councillor Pearson said it all. I'm pretty good at this point. So.
Okay, well, thank you for your work as deputy mayor this month. A few points that I'll share is a reminder to council that the Local Government Leadership Academy is coming up in March 11th to 13th. It's at the Radisson in Richmond. If you're interested, it is covered in the policy to attend, but you'll need to notify staff so they can register and book. If you have gone to this before, you may be eligible for a certificate. You would need to attend this particular academy, not this one, but one of them, and also so many hours at UBCM or AVICC or some other. There's a whole listing of that, so that you would get so many for level 1, so much for level 2, and then there's level 3. So there's likely a few of you that are eligible for one or the other. So please check that out and look into it and see if you would like to go. So I would just just do that push that's there. Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about this?
The Local Government Leadership Academy? Have you, okay, so it's there was sort of years ago, the Union of BC Municipalities determined that everyone here is sort of thrown into elected office, and now what do? So they championed the Leadership Academy, which is basically real immersive learning. So a convention sometimes has workshops, and then it has your resolution session, and then you have a trade show, and then you have advocacy meetings. And so you're kind of all over the place. This one is focused on learning in local government. And this particular one, it follows the council cycle. So a lot of this will be, you're now in year 4. How do you finish off the term? So a lot of the program highlights are online. It's always sort of like you're in the hotel and you never leave, because everything is provided, like your meals and everything are there. And then you're kind of going from one session to the other. And all of the workshops are what members are providing either through UBCM or through feedback that, gee, we got a bit of that at UBCM. We need more targeted information on it about here. So it does follow the cycles from newly elected, what is the budget, what are rules of order, and then it's sort of some things build on previous years. Now you've been elected for a year or two. How do you now advance notice of motion? So it's real immersive and focused. And then some of the sessions will have like speakers brought in. Sometimes Councillor Haldane mentioned he met former mayor of Calgary, Mayor Nenshi there. I've met Don Iveson from former mayor of Edmonton there that speak. It's often local government speaking to other local government as well. So it is it's very thoughtfully well put together.
I guess the reason I ask, because I've been doing this now for going on 8 years, and this is the first that I'm aware of it.
Well, that's interesting, because some of us have gone, and I used to be a director, so I've
Yeah, I
done
don't
a
know.
job
Yeah.
of informing you on this. I would say, considering I was once a director involved in a panelist at it, and was
I miss things, but I just
presenting,
don't, I don't recall ever being invited to this. Maybe
Year 1.
microphone.
for you.
Both of us was at Tainamara. That was.
That's where the year 1 took place, so.
Okay, that was a
we
while
went to
ago.
that one, and then
Yeah.
it goes to Richmond.
Well, the year 1 is always broken out by area associations, and they work with the area associations and have it, and then years 2, 3, and 4
Yeah.
all go back to
That's the only
Richmond.
one I remember, and I didn't attend because I had another engagement, but.
And
yeah,
so sometimes there's a conflict, so look
Yeah.
up the Local Government Leadership Academy. The highlights of the program are there, and then just advise their staff so they can book. I unfortunately can't make it just because of the scheduling. I'm just away in March. Otherwise, I would have loved to have gone. But you should definitely check it out. Okay, I just make that push because I think it's very valuable. So that's one piece.
Okay.
Thank you. Yep. I will share here in Sooke, we do have the Neighborhood Welcome Program. This is a rebrand of what was known as the Welcome Wagon in years past. So I do meet with the coordinator, and there are businesses and various organizations that are all part of the welcome package. So you kind of have to be advised, or you need to make contact, but it is a great way for new residents to get to know what's out in the community. And I met with the coordinator today. There's a great response. I always sign off a letter that goes into the package. And then it's always the case of learning about what businesses and services exist here in Sooke. And over time, she's starting to collect the various demographic. Is it young families looking for childcare, or is it people retiring looking to volunteer, or what other pieces are involved there? So I just wanted to highlight that the service is there. The Sooke News Mirror did a really good feature about it, and it sort of went on hiatus with COVID, obviously, and then the program has rebranded itself. So that's exciting. Just a heads up to everyone that Friday is a professional development day, so no school for our school age Sooke 62. Actually, I think all all school districts in the region have Friday off to make it a 4-day weekend combined with family days. So just be mindful of that. If you go to the pool, there might be a lot of young kids in there too with you when you're used to quiet hour. In years previous meetings, we talked about the Sooke Council Club. Many of you have participated with that. We have a number of school groups that are starting to book spaces. I did ask our staff member to help. We were featured in a local government magazine last year. So to take that article and to forward it out to the schools, we've gotten a good response to that, as well as some other local clubs like Boys and Girls Clubs, Girl Guides and Scouts and the like. So I'll keep you posted on that. A lot of it sort of takes place in April. At previous meetings, we talked about my upcoming trip to Natori, Japan. So just again, this is not a taxpayer funded trip that I'm going on. I am self-funding myself. It was just important for me. This program, as you may recall, is transitioning from a friendship city to a sister city relationship. It predates me. It predates actually our incorporation. 3 decades of school children have formed connections with other students in Japan, and our students spearheaded a significant fundraising drive in 2011 following the significant earthquake and tsunami that devastated the region. Coincidentally, this is an area that I lived in once upon a time. And so I've always wanted to go back there. So my trip is coming together. I highlight this because if you were interested, their NHK, which is like a Japanese broadcasting network, has put together a 2011, the first 3 days. So they've taken at the 10-year mark, all of the various video and put it together over what happened in those first 3 days. What was the Japanese government doing at the time? The alert that went out, the 6 minutes, they have the whole 6 minutes of various entities of what was happening with the earthquake because it was 9 on the Richter scale. Then the evacuation of the building, and then you hear the tsunami horns go and the alerts to go to high ground. And then within seemingly minutes, you start to see the water go out and then it all flowing in nonstop. And then it shows people moving to higher ground. You see the water turn black, and then you see the burning, and then all of it on fire. There's some warnings about it because it is very hard to see. And then it talks about the work being interrupted because of aftershocks, another tsunami coming in, and then the wreckage when relief starts to show up, and then also how the evacuation of 10 around where the Fukushima plant was brought in from 10 kilometers to 20 kilometer radius, and then over 100,000 people being evacuated out of the region with very little notice, all in 3 days. So it's quite insightful. It's about 45 minutes long. It's very well put together. So just brace yourself for the content because it was a bit hard to watch. But it is interesting because we talk a lot about a tsunami. Here's what it actually looks like in a country that is actually very well prepared overall. So just a sense and some lessons learned, and that is the case where what is the country mobilizing to do to prevent the loss of life? And what could they learn from this going forward? And what potentially could we learn? Because we're in the same ring of fire. So I'll share that. And just a highlight for me is that I am been participating and will be in this Global Civility Summit. This is held by the Callan Academy. Diane Callan Sooke is the host. So I was invited last year and I wrote an essay to be put into the book that will be launched. And so the summit is online. It gathers civic leaders globally. It's all going to be done online. But notice of this, you might start to see it going around in various social media challenges and wonder why you see my face bobbling along with that, but it's because I'm a participant in one of the speakers. So I'm doing my recording for that coming up here and getting prepped for that. So that's just something I've been working with on the side. So, and then I'll share it with you when it's done. And I'm kind of excited about it because I've never written anything that would actually see the light of day. So I'm writing another. No,
Good.
I don't use AI. I didn't even know how to use it at that time. I wrote it myself, but I did have some help with my grammar and my spelling. But it's the Global Civility Summit 2016. And it's just a 3-hour join visionary civic leaders and sages sharing tools and wisdom to foster a culture of civility.
We get to witness.
I think if you register, Leading Through Uncivil Times. So there's a group of us. You can join us online, but more to come in due course. Maybe I'll share my essay with you someday. I'm writing a really fun short story right now. Anyway, more to come on that too. That's a work of fiction. Okay, on that note, I will look for council to close the February 9th, 2026 meeting to the public pursuant to the following subsection of the community charter, the time being 8:06. 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements if the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. So that's moved by Councillor Haldane and seconded by Beddoes. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Councillor McMath, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Thank you. I didn't go to you to move for adjournment. That's why I had to ask. It's caught me by surprise. Okay, all those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you to the members of public and those viewing online tonight for being with us. We'll see you next meeting.
Councillor McMath, you can stay online. I'm just going to shut down the live stream.
Will do.